Hey, what's going on, my friends? I hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. And yeah, we're in my hotel room. We are at Mount Fuji in Japan, and we're going to be going to, I think, the Sony headquarters tomorrow. So I'm really excited for that and have a chat to some of the representatives there. So, I'll be asking a few questions that you guys will probably have. But today, we're going to be talking about the Sony ZV-E1 and just answer a few questions that I've been getting on social media. And just my overall thoughts as well in reply to some of those questions, because some of them are a little bit outrageous and some of them are, fair point. I can take that, but that's what we're going to be discussing today. And the first one is when it comes to this camera, it's been marketed towards vloggers and content creators, those kind of things. And I think people are getting the word vlogging wrong. But before we get started, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you guys. I've reached 80,000 subscribers on this channel, and obviously I couldn't have done it without you guys, and thank you very much. I love the support from you guys, and I'll try and make as much valuable content as possible. But I want you guys to get a little bit lively in the comments and just, give me your honest opinion and your feedback on this camera. Is it for you? Are you going to buy it, or are you just going to pass and get something else because of your situation? When Sony, pointing this towards vloggers and, content creators, they're also talking about YouTubers, they're also talking about travel vloggers, people who are actually making money. And that comes down to one of the topics that we want to talk about is that price. And people are saying, this is too expensive. What kind of vlogger would want to spend this money on this camera? And you just got to think, well, if you're a YouTuber, a content creator, online content creator, blogger, vlogger, whatever you want to call yourself, you could be earning money by, collaborating with companies and doing sponsored reviews, all those kind of things. You want a professional camera. You don't want to be walking around the Sony ZV-1 or Sony ZV-E1F, or even you probably don't want the Sony ZV-E10. You want a full frame camera. You want something that has an interchangeable lens with all the nice G Master lenses, and this camera is probably for you. That's what you have to consider when it comes to online content creators and vloggers these days, because vlogging has completely changed. Even since the Casey Neistat days to now, it's completely changed and it's so different. It's a real job. Creating content online is a real job now. And if you are, wanting to try to get really nice professional content, the Sony ZV-E1 is a fabulous camera for that. That's why it is priced where it is. It's below the A7S III for a good reason, because the A7S III has a lot more features. But it's obviously more than the Sony ZV-E10 because, well, Sony ZV-E10 is APS-C. This is full frame, so there is a massive difference already there. It's a completely different sensor. It's that A7S III sensor. It's got full frame 4K 60 and 4K 120 coming in a firmware update. So they are big things when it comes to vloggers or online content creators. Now, the second one is the dynamic stability. Now, I've shown you guys how stable it actually is when you're actually utilizing that dynamic stability. Now, some people are saying, well, you could achieve that just by, putting warp stabilizer in post-production. And you have to think, some people who actually do a lot of content, fast turnaround, don't want to have to do that. They don't want to put warp stabilizer over the top. They don't want to go through the extra process of doing that. This actually does this in camera. That is the really good thing about some of these features, is that if you don't want to do it in camera, you don't have to. But if you do want that crop in camera and get a little bit more stability, you can absolutely do that. And warp stabilizer works way different when it comes to throwing it over the top of this footage, as opposed to trying to get it correct in camera as best as possible. Now, we have to talk about where this camera fits in the Sony lineup, and that's one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about, is that this camera suits a very particular sets of people, and essentially Sony are building this for vloggers or online content creators. You have to consider, if you are a professional filmmaker, this camera probably isn't for you. You've got the A7S III, you've got the FX3, you've got the FX6, you've even got the FX30 if you wanted to go through to the Super 35 or APS-C side. That, you have to consider that, and you don't just, throw this camera into a particular situation and say, well, it can't do that, so it's a terrible camera. Well, it's not made for that particular situation. It's not made for professional videographers to put on a set and do professional commercials. It's a completely different camera. Sony have so many cameras in different lineups specifically for that. You could use the Alpha 1 if you really wanted to. It does pretty much everything. But you'd go for the FX3, FX6. If you're a professional photographer, you'd go for the A7R Mark V. Those kind of cameras have that higher resolution and all the photo-centric features, whereas people are like, well, no one's talking about the stills capabilities. Well, it's a 12 megapixel sensor. The stills will be great for social media content, Instagram, and all those kind of things, but when it comes to professional work, you wouldn't choose this as a professional photography camera, but it can do that. If you do want to be a travel videographer, if you want to take content as a YouTuber and you want to take a few stills, product photos, and put it to social media, this camera is perfectly fine. It does raw photos, which is, it's amazing because it's just like the A7S III, and people are creating incredible content with the A7S III. So just before you start to bag out the camera, you just have to really consider, okay, well, this camera isn't designed for that specific, filmmaking purpose. It's designed for content creators, online vloggers, all those type of people, and that's where things need to be put into context. Now, another one, I have to address the overheating issue again, and I explained it in my main review video. And sure, I did get it to overheat 15 minutes in direct sunlight. It was like 33 or 34 degrees Celsius, so it was really hot, direct sunlight. Yes, it did overheat. 15 minutes of constant recording. Like I said before, you have to remember who this camera is actually for. It's designed for vloggers who actually point and shoot the camera and do bursts, and they turn it around and film a little bit of B-roll in bursts again. They don't just press the button and let it record for 15 to 20 minutes. It's not really a thing that most vloggers would actually do unless they're doing a talking head like this. That's where, things change a little bit, but overheating is not an issue when it comes to this. If you are a professional videographer and you need this camera to be running constantly with an interview or a wedding B-cam, it's not for you. This isn't the camera to do that. Sure, it can do that. You just have to understand the limitations of that as well. But that's where Sony have the A7S III. That's where they have the A7 IV, A7R5, A1, those kind of cameras. That's what they're designed for. So you have to remember that. So there's actually a lot of people comparing this to the A7C, and the thing is with the A7C, sure, it's a very similar body, but they're two completely different cameras. The A7C wasn't designed as a vlogging camera. Essentially, they just wanted a smaller form factor camera than the A7 III, and that's where they came up with the A7C, because it's pretty much the same sensor as the A7 III. It only has 8-bit codec, and it's only got 4K 30 maximum, whereas this has 4K 60 and the capabilities of doing 4K 120 in a firmware update as well. So it's a completely different camera. It has 10-bit codec as well. So S-Log 3 is actually very usable, and you're getting incredible colors out of this S-Log as well. So this next one comes down to the dynamic stabilizer or the image stabilizer. So essentially it just keeps me center framed when you track onto me as the subject. And it's confusing that someone's like, well, you could just do this in post-production. It's just like, yeah, but it does it in camera. What if you don't know how to do this in post-production? Or what if you just don't have time to do it? If you're trying to turn over Instagram Reels or TikTok TikTokers, TikTok videos, TikTok Reels, whatever TikToks do, in even YouTube Shorts and stuff. If you just want to pump out the content nice and fast, you can, and you don't have to do that in post-production. It's literally in camera for you, so it just makes it so much easier. And look, if you don't want to use it, don't use it. It's perfectly fine. I understand it has a significant crop on it, but that allows it to sort of move in frame, and it kind of utilizes the clear image zoom, so you're still getting a 4K image at the end. It's just utilizing that clear image zoom, so it sort of scales back up to 4K, and it still looks really good. And at the end of the day, you're still watching it on your iPhone anyway when it comes to Instagram stuff, or even if you put it into this YouTube video, it still looks really decent anyway. So I don't know, some people. Let's get to the next one. Okay, so weirdly enough, there had been a few people are like, the megapixel is low. Just thinking, you know, you only need about, I think is it 8.2 megapixels when it comes to 4K. So it's 3840 by 2160, which ends up being about, I think, 8.2 megapixels. It's like, this is a 12 megapixel sensor. It ends up being about 10.2 effective megapixels when you do 3840 by 2160. Because it kind of downsamples a little bit from a 4.2K sensor. And 12 megapixels is perfectly fine. It's... Oh yeah, one person's like, does it have S-Cinetone and S-Log? Yeah, that's a good question. Just a genuine question. It does have S-Cinetone and it does have S-Log 3, which is great for people who love color grading, but it's also great for people who don't know how to color grade, just want to put it in S-Cinetone. But the great thing is you got that Cine vlog mode as well that you can turn that on, puts your sort of cinematic black bars that come down, which I'm going to be doing a completely separate video on that one, but you can do a whole bunch of different looks as well, which is kind of cool. So if you have any more questions, put them in the comments below. I'd really like to try and answer those as best as possible, because I've still got this camera for maybe a week as well. So I've got a little bit more time. I've already had, I think, 2 weeks with this camera. So I've had quite a lot of time playing with this camera, and you know, it definitely has its spots, and I will be getting it because I love full frame 4K 50. It's a bit of a game changer with me because the 874 has that crop, and obviously my FX30 is a crop sensor, and my FX6 isn't very compact, and I can't really take that absolutely everywhere. So this is a really good travel camera, and I think it definitely does have its place. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching, and yeah, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, let's get it.